very well. He's an author of almost so many books, 16 books. I must say, as we speak about the 16 celestial degrees, we speak about the 16 books of yours. And let me tell you, these are on the development of self-awareness, the cultivation of spiritual intelligence.
Manoj Bhai, we can't see you. Maybe if we could request you to switch on your video, please.
I have switched on my video.
Now you are.
Yeah, It is just because I think I'm reading it from the, so when I'm switching apps, it happens probably.
No
I think if my audio is fine, let's bear with that, if that's okay. So yeah, the books are not about cultivation of spiritual intelligence, freedom from emotional suffering, and the creation of a more enlightened way to live. He has really served the GRC, the Global Retreat Center, which has been recently refurbished and re-inaugurated in a very big way. And he also is a management tutor and a spiritual coach. And he always likes to say that with a lot of insight and humor, he brings together the three key strands which are needed in the 21st century. And what are those three strands? One is self-awareness, second is emotional intelligence, and the third, most important, I must say, continuous unlearning. I think we need to really unlearn quite a few things to learn new things. And he has really, for the past 30 years, been guiding and facilitating a lot of souls all over the world. And as always, before I give it to Sister Claudia for the official inauguration, welcoming her, so I'll speak a few lines in the form of a poem, and it also relates to today's value, which is on guidance. So today, Brother Mike shall share his pearls of wisdom on guidance, which indeed shall help us establish with the Supreme an alliance, because it's only Him, the Supreme, who for all of us is the true reliance. With Raj Yoga, that helps us to connect with Him as an appliance. Weaknesses can play a lot of havoc and make us feel like a nuisance and make our head spin with its mind-blowing parlance. But we know we have to win over them by being in our core essence, so that we can then spread around the mighty soul fragrance. Because learning meditation also is indeed a spiritual science, which helps the soul to search its solace in true silence. So with these few words, I would request Sister Claudia now to, thank you.
Thanks, Manoj.
Thank you.
Om Shanti, good morning from Toronto. Today I'm in Toronto. So in a very special day here in Toronto. So I flew last night and I just landed in Toronto. So I like to welcome you to Toronto, all of you to Toronto. And also I like to give a nice flower from that we got here in Toronto for you, Mike. And then very much happy to hear you again. And then it's nice to hear your whatever you have to tell us, to teach us. Everything you teach us is always very important in our life. So welcome. And, let's see what you are going to teach us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I accept the rose with a lot of love. And I'm creating the fragrance in my head.
Yes, it is smelling good. It's smelling very, very nice.
Oh, I'm sure it's lovely. Yeah. Very good. So should I commence? Should I start?
Yes, please. Yeah. Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. So now I have the screen, or because I will want. That's it. I want to share my screen eventually. So very warm welcome to everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in. And as you know, the subject of today's exploration, I think is what we would call it together, is this idea of guidance. And I was kind of exploring the definitions and the meanings of this particular word. I'm not sure we would call it very often a deep spiritual value, but certainly there's a lot of it going on in the context of our spiritual life, if you like. And so I was noticing that one of the uses of this word is in the phrase, that when they make armaments to blow each other up in the world, they make sure built into those armaments are what's called guidance systems. And these, of course, are systems which guide the munitions to their target, basically. And I was thinking that this whole series on values is really a kind of, guidance system. And of course, it's being guided towards our intellects, our minds, our consciousness on a very, very regular basis. And so I just need to congratulate everyone who's participated in the organization of that. I mean, it's amazing, really, that it's sometimes more often than weekly that it covers one particular subject. And so I was thinking of asking you if you knew of the parable that defines the process of guidance. It's an ancient parable, and it's all about groups of people who go to IKEA. I'm sure you know IKEA, and they all buy a bookcase, do it yourself, put it yourself together, a bookcase. And these 7 groups of people then take the bookcase home to assemble the bookcase. And of course, it's all in flat pack, and with it, there's a set of guidelines as to how to put this particular piece of furniture together. So group number 1, when you have guides, when you receive guidance, really, you know that everyone has a different way of receiving it, depending on their mindset, what you might call, depending on their sanskars, or their personality, their persona. And so these 7 groups that went to IKEA to buy a bookcase pulled the bookcase and the guidelines out of the packaging, and they start to read the guidelines. And of course, they're just guidelines as to how to put the bookcase together. And the first group, they're the scientists. And the scientists, immediately they open the packaging, they give each scientist a little bit of the bookcase and tell them to take it away, to go home and assemble that piece of the bookcase. And so they all come back together, and they've all got bits and pieces. And so they have a real hard time putting it all together. The second group are the sociologists, and the sociologists open it up and they read the guidelines, and they start arguing about where bits were made and who wrote the guidelines and in what country and what were they paid, and et cetera, et cetera. So they were very, very much interested in the people that were involved in the process, and they didn't really get very far. The third group were politicians, and politicians, they took the bookcase out of the wrapping, and they started to read the guidelines on the way home. But by the time they got home, they were arguing over what books, what ideologies, what philosophies to put in the bookcase. And so they never built it. They just ended up arguing all night about what belief systems you would find in the bookcase. And then there was a group of religionists, the religious people. And they got home and they opened up the wrapping and the bookcase, and they started reading the guidelines. And then they said, well, we're not certain about these guidelines. We're not absolutely so. Well, some were very certain and had instant faith in the guidelines, but others, they expressed a lot of doubt. So they started arguing over the content of the guidelines and just trying to work out which ones they could believe and which ones were not believable. So they never really built the bookcase because the guidelines they started arguing about, and were arguing all night. And then there was a group of philosophers, and the philosophers got home and they unwrapped the bookcase and the guidelines, and the philosophers, they started arguing over the meaning of the words that they were reading in the guideline. In fact, they weren't just arguing, they were rewriting the guidelines according to what they thought was a more accurate way to say things. And The sixth group was a group of contemplatives. And the contemplatives, when they got home, unwrapped and unraveled the bookcase and the guidelines, they sat around and they took the guidelines very slowly. They took one sentence at a time, and they contemplated the sentence and its meaning for about half an hour. And so they took about a week to build the bookcase, basically, because they were very slowly trying to interpret what the guidelines were trying to say. And the final group was the group of the mystics. And the mystics, well, they unwrapped the bookcase, they pulled out the guidelines, threw the guidelines away, didn't even read them. They sat in a circle with the bits of the bookcase in the middle and meditated for half an hour. Then after half an hour, proceeded to build it. And so they were the only ones who really, really, truly built the bookcase. And so the moral of the story is everyone has a different way of interpreting whatever guidelines, whatever advice, whatever suggestions someone is making towards them, however way in which someone is trying to aim them to achieve whatever is to be achieved. So everyone is different. And that's really the crux of the issue. So let me take you on a little bit of a journey, and let's explore various dimensions, I think is the best way to say it, of receiving guidelines. So I'm going to share my screen, and I'm looking for the share screen. There we go. And I just do that, and I do that, and I do that. And that should give me a screen with the word guidelines on it and 2 words accompanying it for guidance only. And so I am no authority. In fact, there probably isn't an authority on this particular subject, but this is these are just a few thoughts or a few ideas which I'll share with you on this particular. You might call it a value, but I would call it a kind of behavior in a sense. And so there's two aspects really. There's guidance or guidelines we receive in the world. They're physical, they're very physical, they're very external, they're very separate from us. And then there's guidelines which we receive every day, which is to do with ourself. In other words, our consciousness. So one's external and the other one is internal, until the day comes when we can put them both together. So in both cases, the one receiving the guidelines is seeking to know. In the physical world, they're seeking to know what's going on, where to go, how to get there, what to see, and how much it will cost. And that's really what you will find in most cities and most countries in the world today, is a set of guidelines which are instructive to those who are seeking to know. Whereas on a spiritual level, when it comes to consciousness, there's a different set of questions which one asks. Questions like, who am I? What am I? Where am I? Why am I here? How do I work, etc. So in a sense, in the first instance, the guidelines come from outside in, whereas the guidelines to answer such questions about myself come from inside out. And so I am the supplier of the guidelines, if you like, whereas with the guidance in a town or a city, they come from outside, they come from another person. But in both cases, we are going to source what's called information. I'm going to turn that information into our beliefs or a belief system. And then depending on how much effort we're prepared to make, how many buses we're prepared to ride, or how much meditation we're prepared to do, we'll turn those beliefs into actual experience. We'll experience the show, or we'll experience ourselves or the quality of ourself. And then we turn that experience into knowing, or what you might call knowledge, if you like. So it has its origins in information. And so that information is shared with us every day. We're not receiving knowledge, but information. And it's up to us to turn that information into our own personal knowing, or knowingness, if you like. And so the external and the internal. And so the guidance spectrum that we find in the world today is not new to many people, but perhaps this is the first time we've seen it all together. And they're all forms of guidance, really. And first of all, there's the instructor who demonstrates and explains. Then there's the teacher who tells and who tests. And in a spiritual context, there aren't really any teachers, because there's nothing to tell, and really there's nothing to test except for oneself within oneself. The teacher is just passing on information. The coach, they'll ask the right questions, and they will encourage the individual to develop ability or capacity, etc. So being a coach is more in the spiritual context, in a sense, once the information has been imparted. Then, of course, there's the mentor. There's the person who's a bit further down the road, a bit further along, who has a bit of experience and wisdom to share. And so if you haven't got a mentor, it's usually a good idea to find someone who's wiser and a bit more experienced, and to milk their consciousness, if you like, and to get everything you can from them. Then, of course, there is the guide, and the guide's aim is to point the way and to make suggestions as to what turns to take and how to overcome whatever obstacles are in the way. I mean, they're all guides in their own way, but then there is the facilitator, and the facilitator opens the space, and the definition of facilitation is to make things easy. And so they make things easy by opening up the space for development, by not just encouraging it, but by not just asking the right questions, but opening the space which is of unconditional acceptance, unconditional allowing of the other to develop and explore for themselves, or explore and develop for themselves. And then finally, there is the friend. And whoever is a friend who gives guidance is someone who accompanies us and who listens as much as talks, because they understand, I guess, that when you encourage someone to speak, they're really talking to themselves. I'm sure the wiser of those amongst us will recognize this idea that when you speak, when the teacher talks, they're really kind of talking to themselves. And so therefore, they're inducing their own realizations about things. And this is why a good friend will listen more than speak. It's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, as they say. So there's different kinds of guidance in the world that we will find today: personal guidance, social guidance, vocational, educational. They're all different types of guidance. And for each one, there are certain people who develop a career, and social guidance and moral guidance, really the people responsible for passing that on are parents and teachers. And so their job is to help us understand maybe not right from wrong, but what is accurate and what is inaccurate. Help us to understand our own response to doing something inaccurately will be a form of suffering, as opposed to just telling us what is the right and wrong thing to do. They would teach us to be much more aware of the emotions that we feel, because that's a signal when we're emotional that we're suffering, and the suffering is a signal that we've done or doing something either in a social context or in a moral context. We're not doing something very accurately or as accurate as we could. with personal guidance. That's people like personal trainers or what they call happiness hucksters, people who run seminars and courses and tell you how to be happy and to enjoy life, etc. And so they're kind of a personal trainer type of individual or personal coach type of individual. With our education, of course, it's teachers. They play the role of educating us and giving us their guidance and their way in terms of our education as children and even as adults, further education. Vocations tends to be the career officer or the career guru in the organization or in the school system, which would advise us or give us some guidance as to a vocation to follow or appropriate vocations. Our health is, of course, doctors. They play the role of guiding us towards better health and towards diagnoses, towards understanding how our bodies work. Leisure in terms of people who work in the holiday or the exercise industries. It's their job to give us some kind of guidance in terms of where to take it easy, why to take it easy, why relax, etc., etc. I'm not going to go into details on all of these because we're pretty much familiar with all of these. The last context in which guidance is given, of course, is the spiritual. And then we might, or some people might, say that they take guidance from God, or they take guidance from their guru, or God becomes their guru, etc., etc. And it might well be they take guidance from their scripture, you know, and they believe they're being spiritual, or they believe that's how God guides them through their scripture. And they're quite entitled to do that, of course. But then there are others who will take guidance from just about everyone they encounter and every event that happens. In other words, there's something to learn from everyone in front of me and every event that happens around me. And the reason that my attention is focused on the event or the person is there is something to be gleaned. There's something to learn, something to get from that individual. And that may include whatever I read in my scripture, you know, or whatever I express in my prayer or receive in the vibrations of a meditation. And so these would be probably the deepest form of guidance and the most personal. I don't know. I kind of got around to thinking about, well, what is spiritual guidance exactly? You know, if you're giving guidance to someone, then what might be the principles that you would share with them that you would indicate are kind of important occasionally? And the first thing I kind of came up with is words and concepts. They're not to be taken literally. They only point the way. They are guiding you towards whatever aim or whatever objective you've created. Any words or context or concepts that you might consume in the context of wherever you want to go, they're only words and concepts. In other words, it's necessary to go beyond them because they're physical things. They're things of the mind. And in a sense, in the spiritual sense, we're going beyond the mind, yeah, eventually. Now that just really depends on the awareness of the individual. Number two was it's useful to be influenced by the presence of higher vibrations. In other words, I think they call this darshan in some countries, is that when you're with someone whose vibration is higher or purer or of a more refined tone, then it automatically lifts you up. It lifts you towards that vibration. And therefore it becomes easier or better to interpret whatever guidelines you are receiving. When you're in that higher vibration, your consciousness is in that higher vibration. So hang out with those kinds of people, look for those kinds of people. Number three was there's a process that we need to personally create and practice for ourselves. Yes, sure, you will get a guideline as to how to meditate and how to be of service and how to study, but eventually you have to be the creator of the process that you use to lift yourself spiritually, to refine the nature of your consciousness. So your practices have to be created for you. What works for you at this particular moment in your journey, in your spiritual journey. And so that's why, once again, don't take everything literally, but be the creator as much as possible of how you will practice, how you will get there. And so principle number 4 is the usefulness of a gathering of people who are doing a similar thing, going a similar way, who have similar aims spiritually. And so if you're in that gathering, then there's a magnification of the energy, basically, and it's uplifting. It's useful to be in that gathering, if no other time, but occasionally, to uplift yourself, to help yourself, and to use that gathering. And know that as you're in that gathering, you're also making a contribution to it. And it's helping you to interpret and to use whatever basic guidelines you've received so far. And to look into the depth of those guidelines, because they are just windows, basically, or doorways through which you can go and discover deeper aspects to your own spiritual journey. And so as the further you progress, the subtler the information that's contained in whatever guidelines you're receiving becomes increasingly subtle. And that information has always been there, if you like. It's just you haven't been subtle enough to be able to see it, to know it, to realize it. And so as you progress, as you progress on the journey, you become more subtle as you meditate more, as you study more, as you integrate more with those whoever else is studying, then you become more subtle. Therefore, you begin to notice new interpretations, new ways of using the information that you are receiving from outside in. So eventually, ultimately, you free yourself from the need of external sources of information, and increasingly, if not totally, then you become more aware of the subtlety of your own self, your own consciousness. And that's really very close to whatever aim you might have spiritually. So that leads us on to principle number 6, is there's no achievement or end point to the spiritual journey, because really what you're doing is you're opening up your awareness. You're becoming more aware of the infinity, of the depthlessness of your own spirituality, your own spirit, your own beingness, basically, is ultimately infinite. So there's no point of arrival. There's no end point. There's just a continuous deepening of your awareness. And that's quite hard to put into language, because language has beginnings and ends. Beginning of the sentence and the end of the sentence usually contains a full stop, and you have arrived at a full stop. Whereas the spiritual journey really has no beginning and no end. But that's probably another seminar. And then finally, the desire to belong, whether it's to the source or to the fellow travelers on your journey, the desire for belonging, in other words, the feeling that some people have when they are converted to a certain religion, now I belong. Now I'm here, I've arrived, I feel as if I belong here, is really at a deeper level a personal calling to be, a longing to be. It's what we all have, this longing to be ourselves. And so the spiritual journey is really, although we might feel as if we belong or we want to belong, it's really a longing to be. Belonging is a longing to be myself, to be whole, to be unlimited, to be infinite, basically, which is really a kind of return to what we started out as, and in a sense, an awareness that has been diminished over time. And so we've arrived back at our state of being. And so this feeling of belonging it's not relevant anymore. You know, in other words, you could say you belong to everything and everyone that you encounter along the way and wherever you are. So these were some of the principles of receiving guidance and how to use that guidance along the way. And so that led me to the attributes of someone who's guiding you accurately. You know, someone who is giving you guidance, but is doing it in a way that is accurate. And in a way you can tell, because they'll have certain attributes. And these are just a checklist. They're easy words to use, but they're not so easy to embody. And the first aspect of a person who's giving accurate guidance is you can sense they have wisdom. Yeah, they're expressing their wisdom in whatever they say and whatever they do. And of course, wisdom, as we know, acquired wisdom is acquired from experience. And there's a balance between that and what's called innate wisdom, the innate wisdom that we all arrive with. You know, we all might be very inexperienced, but you could have a great deal of innate wisdom. In other words, a wiseness. Sometimes you see children who are wiser than their parents. You know, they've arrived with this innate access to a depth of wisdom that their parents don't really understand. Whereas the father might have a lot of, or the mother indeed, might have a lot of experience. And so they've experienced a kind of worldly wisdom, which is acquired, basically. And so it's a combination of the two would really make someone who's who can guide accurately both in the world and within oneself. And so some of the other traits or qualities or attributes that individual would have is clear communicator. They'd be quite sensitive to where you're at. And of course, they themselves would be quite honest. You know, they've gone beyond the need to hide or obfuscate or disguise anything. They're quite honest in their communication, basically. And they would have humility. They wouldn't be trying to prove anything. They wouldn't be trying to instill fear in you as they advised you. They would be a very good listener. And of course, the hardest thing in the world for many, many people is they would be non-controlling. And this is what we all grow up with, this belief that we can control others, that others should do what I want to make me feel okay, etc. And so we're externalizing our sense of feeling. We're giving other people responsibility for our journey, for our internal sense of what we feel at any given moment. And so the good, accurate guider would have gone beyond the attempt to control others. So you would never see them trying to fix, trying to make others do things. They would never use the language of should, have to, must. Yeah, and so it's not easy to find someone who's reached that stage, and that's the stage we're all going towards, and what we're all kind of receiving guidance in achieving. And so these kinds of qualities, and there's probably many more, these are what will inspire trust in the receiver of that guidance, and that may be you or maybe another person. And it's what inspires trust. You will then feel as if you can trust that person, and what they say, depending on the qualities or the attributes that they themselves are able to display. But not a blind trust, a trust in the person, but then taking the information they share with you and making sure that although you might turn them into your own personal beliefs, that you practice in such a way that you might experience the truth of what they've shared with you and therefore know for yourself. That's the challenge for us all, is to get out of our kind of different people, a bit of a lazy mindset, and know for yourself. And that takes unlaziness, if you know what I mean. So spiritual guidance using words and concepts, and this is a very simple way of entering into a kind of meditative state, which is what's required, is to ask the question, who am I? Which immediately turns our attention back into ourselves, away from the world around us, but into ourselves. There was a certain old lady that we all know very well, and she used to start her classes every day with asking us, are you asking yourself, who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And so she would keep repeating this question, but never answer it, of course, but just repeat it over and over and over again. And so keep using that question at the beginning of your contemplation, meditation, reflection, etc. So you're turning your attention within, and you're inventing automatically your own answers to the question. And your own answers are going to supply you with lots of non-answers. You're not this, you're not that, you're not what you do, you're not what you see in the mirror, you're not what you possess, etc., etc. So you're going to eliminate what you are not. And that's going to be harder and harder as you arrive at everything that you're not, but you're going to have to find what you are as you turn your attention within. So ultimately, you're going to go beyond language and beyond concepts, because you're limited by language and concepts. And so you're going to go beyond thinking, because thoughts really are expressed mostly in language and in concepts. So this will lead you to silence. It leads the mind to stillness, to silence, and to that space beyond the mind, prior to the mind, which is what I really am. It's what I am. It's what everyone is, ultimately. And then the mind becomes still, and I simply be. And so we, you, I, everyone, you simply be. So there's no answer to who am I, because who am I is in words. And so it's searching for a concept. And so you're going beyond words, beyond concepts. The mind is becoming still, and you're simply in a state of being still, being silent. And that's when the truth emerges. The truth is realized. Yeah, wordlessly and non-conceptually. You don't think it. You definitely don't say it. You don't conceive of it. It just is realized. The truth is realized. And that's just on the doorstep of being. I'm using words here, I'm using concepts, and it's not accurate. Being truth itself. Yeah. And so truth is recognized deep within the heart of your being. And so the true heart is at the core of your being. It is your being when it's silent and still. And so it's you kind of recognize it, but you don't think it, you don't say it, you don't conceptualize it. It just is. And when that's achieved, when that is recognized by yourself, then you can do nothing but laugh. Yeah, this is why you probably can tell I kind of like laughter, and I laugh at myself a lot. Yeah, because there's nothing else to do really but laugh at this point, at that point. And you realize, yeah, not how silly, but just what a waste, or not even not what a waste. You just realize that this game is just a game, this play is just a play, and nothing is to be taken seriously. But you laugh as you look back, or you realize how seriously you've been taking it. You know, and it's not serious. This is not serious, really. In fact, it's not serious at all. So, a guide finally to yourself. You know, and this is your homework, really. This is my guidance to you. Yeah, and please don't believe me. You know, you play with it yourself. Go into it yourself. We talk a lot about self-awareness, but if you really, really go into self-awareness, you will notice you cannot be aware of yourself. You know, when you start to meditate, you'll notice why you can't meditate. There's this thought, this feeling, there's that memory and that idea. They're all happening within your awareness. You are awareness. Yeah, you are that awareness, and they're happening within you. And so you're becoming aware of those things when you're trying to meditate, trying to go a little bit more deeply into yourself. That's not wrong, it's not bad. But you're not going to be aware of a separate self. There isn't a self that's separate from awareness itself. You know? There's two ideas, two concepts, self and awareness. And you're not two, you're one. And so you're awareness itself. And the same with image. You know, if you think of self-image, there's not an image and then the self. The problem is the self loses itself in an image and then believes that the image is itself. Yeah, and that's otherwise known as the ego. Yeah, that's what the ego does. The ego has lots of images going on in the mind, fragmented mind, and it loses itself in some image, some idea, some system, some belief, and then believes that's me, and tries to defend, tries to project, etc., that image onto others, that belief, that philosophy onto others. And so self-image is not, it's not possible to have a self-image. You know, you're not separate. They're not separate ideas. They are just one, because you are just one. Self-love, same with self-love. You cannot love yourself, which is contrary to many workshops and many books and many gurus who will tell you have to love yourself. You have to love yourself more. And so you go on the seminar, then you go on the seminar again, and you go on the seminar again, and you're still not. Why? And you're wondering, why do I not love myself? And that's because you are love. The self is love. The self and love are one, not two. When you say I love myself, which one am I or the self? It's not possible. And so the self is love. And when you realize that, that's when you'll laugh again. Love is what I am. You know, but of course, most people don't realize that because they see themselves in the mirror, or their physical body in the mirror, and they think, well, to love myself is to love my body more. And that's called vanity. Yeah, and so they love their body more, but then the feeling that's coming from deep within inside is not changing. It's still got those strains of frustration or anger, upsetness or fear. And so the love is still being pushed to one side. So it's like I'm pushing myself to one side under the illusion that I am what I see in the mirror. Self-esteem isn't possible. It's not possible to esteem yourself. You know, self-esteem, when you esteem someone, it's like when you respect someone. In fact, I might have respect on this list. I can't remember that. But when you respect someone, what are you doing? You're affirming the worth, you know, and the value of that individual. And so when you're self-esteem, it's like you don't need to affirm it. When you have self-esteem, you know your value and your worth. It comes from inside. It just wells up. I mean, I'm doing this at the physical level, but it's really, it comes from within. It's the restoration of the awareness of your value and your worth, but you don't think it. You might feel a subtle feeling, you just know you're worthy, you know you're of value. but you don't register it. Oh, I'm so worthy, I'm so valuable. No, that's not self-esteem. That's the ego saying, oh, I'm so worthy, I'm so valuable, and I need to tell you that I'm worthy and valuable. And that's called virtue signaling. And that's not real self-esteem. Real self-esteem arises naturally when you are being yourself, your natural self. You don't have to apply anything to yourself. It just arises naturally. Self-control, we've kind of looked at already. Yeah, you can't really control yourself. we used to have parents who used to teach us, you control yourself now. Come on, I control you. Don't react like that. Control yourself. And so you don't. You can control how you react if you do a lot of work and you really force a certain response. But ultimately, it's not necessary. Just be your natural self, which is, in a sense, what we're kind of learning through the information that we're receiving is how to be our natural selves. And when you're naturally yourself, then it's not, the control is not an issue. You don't have to control anything. You just flow into the world. You're flowing into your relationships. You're flowing towards whatever is requiring your attention. Yeah, and so there's no fear that you're going to react. There's no fear that you're going to be upset or emotional or angry. There's no fear like that. So there's no necessity like, oh, I better get a grip of myself here. Oh, I'm really scared. I'm going to be scared. And so fear of fear. I'm panicking already just thinking about it. Whereas when you're in your natural self, you're not thinking about anything. You're just available to respond appropriately. You're available to respond appropriately. That certain old lady that I mentioned earlier on, one of her teachings, I won't forget, one of her guidelines is just do whatever's in front of you. Just do whatever's in front of you. And don't worry about anything else. And so there's no self-control there. There's just responding appropriately. And then confidence. Confidence is to confide. And so when someone has self-confidence, do they take time to confide in themselves? I better tell myself I can do this. I better tell myself that I'm capable. No, they just carry on. They're just doing what they need to do naturally. It's like the conviction that I can. Confidence is the conviction that I can. And you can't force that. If you think it, accompanying that thought will be the doubt that you can't. And so the conviction that you can comes from when you are being your natural self, when you're being easy and natural and not wanting a certain outcome, not desiring a certain outcome. Is when you're easy and natural and just accepting everything and everyone as they are. That's the basis of self-confidence. But don't believe me. I don't disbelieve me, as they say. Don't believe me. Please don't believe me. We have enough beliefs, and it's beliefs that really are the problem. But that is another seminar too. But see for yourself. In other words, explore these ideas, these concepts within your own consciousness. Challenge the belief that you've been taught or that you've received or that you're receiving. Challenge it and see for yourself. And so find that certainty within yourself, that commitment within yourself to seeing with clarity. And finally, if you would like to be a guide, this would be my, suggestion really. If you feel the need or you're invited to guide someone and they request advice, don't advise, but make a suggestion. I would suggest, and make it short and to the point, and walk away. And leave that person alone to think about what you've said. That gives them a chance to see and realize for themselves. And you just don't know what you have said, what you've shared might be accurate for 5 minutes or 5 hours or 5 days, but it's to allow them to find their own way of realizing it for themselves. And in the process, it may be they throw out what you've said, what you've shared. And that's okay. That's really okay. Yeah. I'll let you read that. I'm sure we're all familiar with various versions of that. So I need to say thank you for your attention. Thanks for zooming in. And let me stop talking there and see if there's any questions.
Yes, thank you, Brother Mike. We got the link as well where we can send you questions. I'm sure we all have a lot of questions. Or many have got their answers. So I'll still request all, if you have questions, put it in the chat. I think I'll start with just one or two questions while listening to your talk that came to mind. And that's so beautiful how you broke down the facilitator, the teacher to the guide, and you feel they are experienced and they are not imposing. That's what is the essence. And then we like to go with their guidance. I think I had a question that when I am seeking guidance from somebody, how to break out of the perceived trust. Means if they are supporting, their guidance is supporting my intention, my goal, or what I want or I believe, I'll go with it. Otherwise, I'll discard it and I'll still stay confused. Does that work that way? Like it works. Their belief, my belief. What I want, their guidance must match with what I want.
Oh, well, it's up to you to use what they've said to you to check yourself. You know, if it doesn't agree with the space you're in or the beliefs you have, it's up to you to remain open, to ask the question, well, why have they said that? And what is the wisdom that lies in what they're sharing with me? And then to play with that and to allow that to shape or affect where appropriate, where necessary, what your belief or what your process is. And so it's really about open-mindedness. And that is one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is your own discernment. And you know, how much you're able to discern the wisdom of what they've said to you. And that's up to you entirely personally. It's not up to them. You know, it's up to you.
That's where comes that spiritual guidance. So we start to listen to our own heart, or we feel it inside our heart. So when it becomes completely silent and I get an answer, so that's my inner guidance. One is external guidance, one is inner guidance you were talking about. I think I wanted to ask how to deepen that. It's the whole process, as we could understand. But any tips you would give that how to deepen this?
You know that there's no how-to in a sense. You know, it's like there's no manual on you know your consciousness and how deeply you can go and what it's going to throw up at certain times. There's no manual to follow in a sense. There are just practices which it's up to you to create and to implement. And everyone will do that in different ways at different times, in different parts of their journey. 1 minute meditation, the next minute they're studying, the next minute they're just thinking and walking and really interested in certain dimensions or aspects of what they've heard. And so there's no one right way in a sense. You know, the thread that runs through everything that we receive is this idea of remembrance. You know, is to remember who you really are, always to put everything next to that, you know, and to see how close you are to being your natural self. And if you're not, then there will be an emotional turmoil, or there will be various thoughts that you've different kinds of confusion. And so that needs to be something you either sit down with and resolve through thinking your way through it, or you sit down and be quiet, let it go, let it be. And so there's no manual for all of this, you know, it's intangible, all intangible.
So it's all practice and like taking the wanting to that level to find your real self and be your real self.
Yeah.
I think I'll ask just one more. The phrase you said that being in a gathering helps until one can lift oneself. Can you elaborate on that?
Well, if you're kind of new to any spiritual journey, then your vibrations, your consciousness, your busyness, your mental busyness is going to be quite intense, really. And so it's useful to be in a gathering of people who are putting out a vibration which is quieter, is calmer, is cooler than yours. And so it will help you to be in that. It's a little bit like being in a warm bath. You don't get in when the water's cold, you get in when the water's warm, and that helps you to relax. And so that vibration that they're putting out into the gathering is helping your consciousness to relax until you don't need that to help you to, you know, you're able to move into that state of consciousness easily on your own without that. It's not that you don't accept it, but it's just you don't need it as much as you did when you started on your journey. You
start to feel your silence and answers more easily yourself.
Yeah, I think
I'll ask a few questions from the chat. Somebody's asking, what about if me most of the times worry more of others than myself because I believe that humankind evolved as a group?
I'm not quite sure I understand the question. Just repeat that again.
So what about if me most of the times worry more of others than myself?
Or you take on board other people's worries. Is that the idea?
Yeah, because I believe the belief system is that the humankind evolved as a group. So you have to care or worry about others.
Yeah, we did. We not evolved as a group, we devolved as a group. You know, that it really depends on your understanding. And for me, very much the group, very much one, separate beings, but one, but not thinking very much. That's how we started. But now here we are, very individualistic, thinking too much, too many worries, too much fear, too easily influenced, etc. So now at this point on the journey, I need to sort myself out. Yeah, if I take on other people's worries and cares and their concerns, I'm going to be a busy boy for the rest of my life. And I'm going to be busy getting involved with others, doing others' business. You know, they say there's three kinds of business. There's my business, God's business, and other people's business. And so their worries are their business. Whose business do we spend most of our time doing? Other people, which is a waste of our energy. And so first I have to sort myself out first. Yeah, in other words, free myself from fear, from anger, from worry, from panic, etc. Free myself from being dependent on other people's worries to give me something to worry about, which is what we've learned to do. We've become dependent on other people's worries. Oh, you've got all that time. I think I agree with you. Yeah, and so I've got to free myself from that and calm down, find my own strength on the inside.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So free yourself, and that is where maybe as a group we can evolve, not devolve. That's beautiful. There's just a question. What is the difference between self-esteem and self-confidence? Is that
they're all connected ultimately. You know, I didn't put self-respect in there, but ultimately it's impossible to respect yourself. There aren't you respecting yourself. There's not two yous, there's just one. You either have respect and you give that to others, Whatever you have to give to others at this point in time. And then you know what you have within yourself. You can't know what was within yourself unless you give it away. You can't know that you are love unless you give it away. Yeah, and that's when you know you have love to give. And that's when you start to know that I am giving myself, I am love. And so you're coming back to realizing yourself all the time with all of these. And so they're all kind of connected because they're all leading you back. If you turn each one, they'll lead you back to your natural self-awareness.
So that is the self-love, staying in your natural self-awareness. I think maybe you can expand on that to expand our self-love. That is all the answers.
Say again that? I just didn't quite
Self-love, how to, maybe what are the different shades of self-love and how we can develop that lately.
Okay. Yeah.
That's a big subject, maybe, but yeah, guidelines.
Okay. So true love has no object. True love has no object. Yeah. But in the meantime, on the way to knowing yourself as love, then you might give that love to others. You know, that to others are objects. Situations are objects. You might say, I love you, but if you keep raising your self-awareness, refining your self-awareness, you'll eventually come to realize, I am love. It's just a word for the highest vibration of consciousness, of awareness. It's just a word that describes that. Yeah, but you don't know it until you give it away. So the more you give it away, and we call this sometimes service, the more you do things with a loving awareness, a loving consciousness. So you're giving away love, but eventually you don't say, I love you. You say, I am love for you. Not quite as romantic, but I am love for you. And that would be a more accurate thing to say and a more accurate state of awareness that you would find yourself in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's wonderful. Yeah. I'm love for you, not I love you. So when we separate the object whom we are loving, but we realize we are love. So that's our.
It's a little bit like you will realize eventually that everybody is within you. The person in front of you is within you. They're there, but you have a version of them here. So when you criticize them, you're really attacking yourself. So when you're being loving toward them out there, because, oh, I love you, you're really loving your version. And so you are love in that moment. And so it's becoming aware of that. You get it?
Right. So I think that's why when we criticize somebody else, it doesn't make us feel good because it wasn't an attack on the self. You are talking about the same human or that existence is the enemy. That's beautiful. I think it's very deep. We have to go deeper in churning on that. Yeah. Thank you. So there's another question. Just laugh is the final outcome. One brother is asking. Because you said smile at the end, you will just laugh. Laugh would be your final stage where you got all the guidance, that inner guidance. So just laugh is the final outcome for spiritual wisdom. Is it, in other words, surrender and accept the drama?
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah. Okay.
Laughter, there's the word humor. The word humor is made up of two things. Hue, one of the meanings is God. God is hue, or the source, if you like. And amour is love. So God is love, which is, I think, mentioned by many down through the through the path, the spiritual paths. And so when you're laughing, you're in the highest form of humor. When you're laughing, you're not really thinking about anything. There's just laughter, you know. So it's one of the highest forms of expression of the human being, of the human being naturally being, is just to laugh, because all of this is not real.
Yeah, so surrender and accept. You have no left. Yeah. So beautiful. There are a few other questions. I'll take few. So can you explain on the point you mentioned that life is not serious? How do you see life journey? And if you don't take it seriously, then how do you improve yourself?
You improve yourself by not taking it seriously. It's the other way around. Don't take anything seriously, and you will improve yourself. As soon as you take something seriously, you create fear. You know, if you look at business people, they take life very seriously because they're scared. There's fear that they won't get to the market on time, or they won't sell enough product, or they won't be a successful business, what defined as worldly success. And so there's fear. And so whenever you create fear, you diminish yourself. In other words, you can't improve yourself. You go the opposite direction. And so the only way to be free of fear, and in other words, filled with love, is through laughter, is through not taking things seriously. Now, that's one answer. The other answer is, it's necessary to really understand why I take it so seriously and why it's not what it appears to be. That's life. Life is not what it appears to be. There's an illusion being created over time, and it's sustained by people in the world today who started, just think of yourself starting as a conscious being, as a spiritual being. And you've come to the point now where you believe you are a body. So there's millions of people who just believe that the material is the only reality. The physical body and everything attached to it is the only reality. And so they therefore take life very seriously, because everything physical is perishable, losable, damageable. Yeah, and so they have to take things seriously to protect what they think is their only reality. But we know that your physical body and everything material is not reality, because everything passes, everything changes, everything goes, everything. And so reality is beyond the material, and therefore beyond, and therefore the true reality is spiritual, which is unchanging, eternal, infinite. And so therefore you start, how could I take that life? How could I take that so seriously? When you realize this for yourself, how could I take that so seriously? But until you realize this for yourself, you will believe that, oh, this is a serious business, this business of living, because you've built your awareness of life only out of the material. That's the short answer. Another seminar required there.
Right. Thank you so much. Yes. Not based on the materialistic achievements, but I think that is the big shift, that we don't go beyond it. And maybe, as you said, you create fear, you are doing actions on a lower level, so you actually don't create a good life. If you can go above to that level of your real self, then you can create best, even better. There is one more question, brother, I'll take. It's based on the spiritual studies that we do. So somebody is asking, Om Shanti, brother, can I know what is the reason some of the soul never get changed their mind from normal people, like lokic people mind, only like they stay in that lokic people mind, even though every day They attend the Amrit Vela classes, listen to the daily Murli classes, but never imbibe what they listen to. The change.
It's not quite the most accurate way to word the question. It's not that they will never change, it's just they haven't changed yet. And so you need to exercise your patience. In other words, bring your patience from the core of your being in relation to that person. Be very patient. How long does it take someone? Some people it takes a long time. Some people it takes decades. It seems, you don't know what's going on inside their consciousness, but it seems they take a long time to actually implement many of the things they're hearing. So some do it very quickly, some do it very slowly, and there's a lot of people in between. And so it's really hard to throw the habit of judgment. You know, it's so easy to judge others. We've spent our life learning how to be judges of others because the media teaches us, our parents teach us, our teachers teach us. Everyone has taught us that we need to learn to judge them. And so I know them better than they know themselves. No, throw out the habit of judgment. It takes a little bit of effort and it takes a little bit of awareness to really throw it out. It's necessary to kind of see the futility of every judgment. In other words, the judgments that we make are materially based. They're materially based. And so it's necessary for me to raise my awareness, my consciousness, out of the material awareness and into a more spiritual awareness, but still live in the world. And the more you do that, the less powerful and influenced the old habit of judgment will be in your consciousness.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think I'll just take a last question. Yeah, it's a long question. What I understand is the person is asking, is it better to be introvert if you notice that your natural self of being a smiling, positive person triggers negative reactions, and particularly at the work atmosphere, uncertain and work atmosphere with, I don't know, competitiveness or others, when you stay your natural self smiling, could it trigger negative reactions, and how to deal with it?
If you are naturally smiling and laughing all the time, but you don't balance that with your sensitivity to where other people are at, then they're going to pick that up. They might not even articulate it to themselves, but they'll pick that up, that lack of caring about others, they pick that up. You're not listening, you're not asking, you're not considering their ideas. If you are listening, asking, and considering their ideas, in theory, there should be no problem. Yeah. And so if there's a balance between the two, but if your laughter is too much for someone, and you're sensitive to that, then you laugh a little bit less. You're in a sense, that's you feeling the pulse of that person. Oh, when I say this, or I do this, or I laugh at that, that really triggers their old feelings of grumpiness, let's say. And so you're sensitive to that. And so you do it less in their company. And so that's just about being adaptable. It's just about feeling the pulse of the other. It's about being sensitive to where they're at, basically. And so that's messy because that's all about relationship. And relationships are messy until you realize that your version of them is what you are relating to primarily.
That's a beautiful concept. Yeah, we all have to churn and realize it. And sensitivity where they are at. That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I think we'll also have a meditation at the end from you, with you, brother. Before that, I'll invite Dr. Ashok Mehta for vote of thanks with us, as always. Thank you.
Such an enjoyable
Uh,
evening with Mike. Mike, you were in your elements today. You shared your wisdom. I've heard you for years and always enjoyed every moment of your talk, wherever you speak. I've heard you several times in India on the future of power, where you really, everyone loved you for that. Today, I liked the continuous, your laughter. You were in a very, very light mood today. And you were in your elements, if I do it. And you said that's the highest form of expression. So you were in the highest form of expression today, according to you. And I think each one of us has enjoyed this talk. You gave a guidance to the guidance, how to be a guide. You said very beautifully, be an example before if you want to guide anybody. I have always been a guide to many people in surgery. And I think that's where we also realize that you have to be a good surgeon to be a good guide. But I think being a good guide in life to understand the ultimate, you have come out very beautifully. And I think this is one thing that you always said, is that the journey from awareness to realization to transformation. That's what you wrote in your, the title of your book, The Immune System of the Soul. I think you have been excellent in explaining to us that this is the guidance for transformation, awareness to transformation. I think it's been a lovely talk. You also said something very beautifully. I am love, instead of saying I love you. I think that's beautiful. Today you sounded more like J. Krishnamurti. In a different way than about a BK or Brahma Kumaris Raj Yogis talk. You didn't use a single jargon of the Raj Yoga today. You didn't say anything about Baba. You didn't say anything about Raj Yoga. You didn't say anything about what we normally talk. I think it's been beautiful, outstanding, loving, and a beautiful guy. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom. I think we have been fascinated. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ashok. I appreciate your words and your sentiment. It's very beautiful, and it's nice to see you here again. And I'm presuming that you're here every week, and so you must have absorbed a lot. And so
I
really,
still recall the first time I met you in London, without yet called. About less than 7-8 people when I came first time in 1991 or so, almost 3 decades. And you've always been different.
thank you. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Yes, Dr. Mehta is the pillar, one of the pillar of Values for Life program, definitely, and he inspires us through his being, definitely.
Fantastic.
And he said it right too. The books, we won't forget, that gives that thorough guidance actually to the self. So it was excellent talk today. All of us will take it forward to churn and bring it and implement in our life. So before we go to the meditation, let me just quickly announce the upcoming sessions. It's a weekly session, as you know. So the next one would be the values workshop, as we do on the same value, that's guidance, where first hour we'll do experiential exercises to deepen our own through our own reflection, our own experience for this value of guidance in life, which is essential. And the second hour will have Sister Valerian from Switzerland. She will take us through further insightful talk and meditation on guidance. It's happening next week, 12th of August, Saturday, 7 a.m. West Coast, US, Canada. That's 7:30 p.m. India. So please note. And our next session for Values for Life series is episode 72 on loyalty. That's in Hindi, Wafadari. And for that, we'll have from Canada, Sister Judy Johnson. She's the director of Brahma Kumaris, Atlantic Canada. And she will be in conversation with Brother Bill Simo from, he's the national coordinating team from Spain, Brahma Kumaris, Spain. So it will be an interesting conversation. So please join us. It will be on 19th August after 2 weeks, same time, 7:30 p.m. West Coast, US, Canada, 8 p.m. India. And you'll get all this information on our websites, vihasa.in and vancouver.brahmakumaris.ca. And you can find all the videos, including today's, which I'm sure all of us will, churn, listen to many more times on our YouTube channels, Vihasa India and Brahma Kumaris. You can also check this, omshanti.tk/playlist/English. That's the playlist for all the Values for Life series talks, and find all the talks. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, we take a photo also because we want to take advantage of the technology fully. So yeah, everybody can switch on their video. Then we can take this memorable moment with Brother Mike. So ready? Don't miss. Switch on your video if you want. So it is from all over the world. So many participants. Thank you so much for being here, and as well as all the translators and recorders. It's big team, Brother Mike. It's a big team that we work together. Yeah,
Very much. Thanks for laying on this afternoon.
Thank you. We are ready to for you to take us through a meditation.
Okay. So thanks once again for having me on. Thank you to Dr. Mehta for his wise words at the end there, and congratulations for the continual into the 70s number of programs. And there must be a very full YouTube channel somewhere. I'm not sure. I haven't tuned into it yet, but I will one day, I'm sure. So let's finish with a few moments of quietness together, as is our custom. And I'll just ask you to relax your body in the chair wherever you are right now. And it's the beginning of the relaxation of your consciousness. And for those of you for whom it's appropriate, look away from the screen so that you don't focus on something external all the time, because you want to turn your attention internally and bring your awareness to yourself. To see if you can be aware of yourself, being aware for a moment. Notice what's in your awareness, if anything, what's passing through your awareness. And then bring yourself to your own mind. And consciously create a thought in your mind about your true nature, which is peace. I am a peaceful being. Just allow that one thought to pass across the screen of your awareness very slowly. And then allow that thought to dissolve, to slowly disappear. And notice what remains. The feeling of peace. The mind is quiet. And you notice a stillness. At the heart of your being. Silent and still. And just stay in this space for a moment. It's in this space I come to know peace is what I am. And just being in this space is a gift for the world. Silent and still. Then bring your awareness back into the room. Bring that peace with you. And let it shape your thoughts, your words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mike. It was a wonderful session, and thank you, everyone. See you again.